In this video, I want to do a quick flyover of SynthCell. It's actually a pretty deep instrument, but let's go through the basics. I'm going to hit plus here to create a new instrument, and I can drag this anywhere. If I want to reorder my instruments, I can put it wherever I want. I'm going to put it at the beginning just because I'm kind of thinking of my instruments at the beginning and then my audio after. And I'm going to double click to open the editor, and we can choose what we want from here. PlayCell is the default, but I'm going to go to SynthCell. So the idea is that this is a subtractive synthesis virtual instrument. Now, oscillator 1 lets us mix several different types of waveforms together. We have saw, pulse, triangle, pulse width modulation. We can modulate that, which is interesting. Even noise. I'm going to bring the volume down just so it's not so irritating. And a sub-oscillator. And then we can have a unison mode where we multiply it and then detune to get a thicker kind of effect. Typical saw kind of type sound. But let's leave that maybe at 2 for now. And I'm going to leave the sub off and that off as well. And then we have oscillator 2, and that lets us mix saw and pulse waveforms. And I'm going to detune this one a little bit. You can hear the pulse width modulation there as we dial the pulse up. And maybe I'll tune this one up an octave. Now we have two filters. Filter 1 processes the output of both oscillator 1 and 2. And we have our usual suspects here. Cutoff frequency, it'll filter everything in this case below, and then boost right at the cutoff point. And we have different modes here. And that we can have key tracking for it to follow the range on the keyboard. And then we have a filter envelope. You can dial in the amount from here, and we get to the envelope here. There's a filter envelope. Sort of slowed the attack. And get that kind of effect. And then we have filter 2, which is applied to the signal path after filter 1. So we can modulate that. So speaking of modulation, let's go into here, the mod page. We have an LFO that we can use or an envelope, and we set them up in the matrix. Let's say I'll set this to sync to tempo and retrigger with each note. And then I'll go to the matrix and we'll set up a routing. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have different pairs of routings. We set one up there and the other one over there. So here I'm going to set this mod LFO to modulate the filter 2 cutoff. And now I'll go back to the LFO and I can change the waveform, the speed of it. And so on. And then we have a modulation envelope, which is a variable ramp generator that can be used to modulate other parameters. So we have different modes here. We have logarithmic attack decay, linear attack decay, exponential attack decay, linear attack release, and so on. And just different shapes for the envelopes. But let's say I'll go into the matrix again, and here I'll route that envelope. Let's go to the mod envelope to maybe filter 1, and let's see what that gives us. We have, or let's go actually to the pulse width modulation. So we'll get a little bit of attack. Actually, you know what? I'm going to take that LFO and route that as well instead to the pulse width modulation. That's great. So now I'm going to go to the next batch or next pair, and here I'll take the mod envelope and we'll route that to the filter 1 cutoff. A little bit of a sharp attack. Go back here and I'll just slow this down. Great. Now we have effects also. We have reverb. I can turn it on. You can choose between different algorithms here. Go with something maybe smaller. Mix and time control. So there's simple controls for each of these. Modulation, I can turn on. There's a chorus effect. 2 different types. 3 different types. We have a flanger and a phaser. Let's go with this first one. And simple controls. Nice and slow. And fairly deep. We have delay we can optionally turn on. If I don't want. You hear it on the short note. You can set the speed of it there. We'll make it a slower delay. Feedback, mix, and different types. So very versatile, but I'm going to leave that off. And then distortion, optionally we turn it on. Different types of clipping, mix, frequency, and the amount of drive. And then we have an arpeggiator. Turn it on. And set the speed over there. The direction. How many octaves. And if you want it to sync to the grid or with each new note on. I'm going to leave it off for now. And then we have some global controls. Polyphony, pitch bend. If we want the mod wheel to control vibrato, panning, tremolo, the low pass filter, high pass filter. And then we have a glide control. So I'm going to leave off for now in mono mode, fine tuning, basic synth controls. So what I want to do is in the envelope now, in the amp envelope, I want to slow the attack down. And now back to the LFO. I'm going to change this up. I want to get a sample and hold type of effect at a faster rate. So that's interesting, and I'm just going to slow this down a bit. A longer release. And now let's put a little MIDI part in here. I'm just going to create a note. I'm going to double click. Let's make this 2 bars long. And this will probably be too low for what I have in mind, but select the note, lengthen it, and then just make a G minor triad. And let's listen to this. I'm going to trigger the scene. Okay, so 1 or 2 things I want to do is I want to mute this vocal thing. It's a little too repetitive and starting to bother me. And I want to just mute this for a moment, and let's listen to that. So there we created a little part. Go back to the SynthCell interface, and I can maybe put this up another octave, and let's see what that sounds like. I can transpose the notes, of course. And again, just a mixer, I'm going to mute this for a moment. Right, and one little change I want to make, I'm going to click SynthCell there. It'll bring me right back. I want to go to global, and we have the ability to have a polyphonic glide. So I'm just going to put it on and leave this in poly mode and get a bit of a pitch glide on the beginning of each new chord as it's hit. It's nice. And I can go into the mod matrix here and maybe take that amp envelope and route that to the glide rate. Yeah, modulate just a little bit. So that's a quick flyover of SynthCell. Next video, we'll take a look at PlayCell.